out the ground rules.
Yeah. Well, good morning, everybody. I want to start this morning by being very, very clear to every single Democrat watching today. Enough is enough. Put the political games aside and fund our homeland security. Last week, just outside my district, an anti-Semitic driver with an explosive-filled vehicle plowed into Temple Israel Synagogue. The building was set ablaze while dozens of children were inside. Hours earlier, ISIS supporter open-fired at Old Dominion University, and days before that, a man wearing a sweatshirt saying, property of Allah, killed 2 people and wounded 14. This is not a game. End the shutdown now. Fund our homeland security. Protect Americans. Now, despite this urgency, however, almost every single Democrat in this town has voted to defund our homeland security. And why? Because they'd rather protect violent, illegal criminals than protect law-abiding American citizens. Let that sink in for a minute. Frankly, I'm sick and tired of it. And guess what? The innocent American citizens are tired of it too. In addition to fighting for an end to the shutdown, House Republicans will take up legislation this week to make sure that foreign nationals who commit fraud can be deported and permanently barred from exploiting more American citizens. I just show you this. And if you think that's unnecessary, let me introduce you to a few people who the Democrats love to support. This man is here illegally from Cuba, who was arrested in Big Rapids, Michigan for credit card fraud. Okay? All right. This man arrested in Carson City, Michigan for fraud and homicide, murder. I think we can all agree he shouldn't be allowed to remain in the country. Another individual in Port Huron, arrested for fraud. A woman in Sandusky, Michigan, also arrested for fraud, right? And that's just in my home state of Michigan. I could keep going without, keep going and going. I mean, this is happening in just my state. I can't even imagine. I mean, we'd be here all day if we had to talk about what's happening in Whip Emer State, right? Minnesota. We wouldn't have enough time. But despite what the liberal media wants you to believe, these are people that law enforcement are targeting. And law enforcement is actually holding these people accountable who have committed crimes against law-abiding Americans. Those are the people that the Democrats want to protect. This is exactly the people Republicans are making sure will never, ever be welcome back here again. Listen, the United States is the most generous nation in the world, but our generosity should never be mistaken for weakness. When people exploit our system, when they steal from our programs meant to help the most vulnerable Americans, when they commit fraud against our families, they undermine the trust that holds these programs and institutions together. And they take resources from Americans. So let me put it really simply. The Biden administration let a lot of these bad people in, like 20 million of them. Terrorists, fraudsters, violent criminals. And now Democrats are playing political games to protect the bad guys and let the American citizens fall to the wayside? Tell me how that makes sense. That needs to end, and that needs to end now. Fund our homeland security. Deport violent criminals. Keep foreign fraudsters out of our country. These are common sense principles nearly every single law-abiding American citizen agrees with. It's time Democrats in Washington started supporting Americans too. And with that, I'll hand it over to Congresswoman from New York, Claudia Tenney.
Good morning. Thank you to my colleagues and to everyone here. This is an important piece of legislation. I want to thank everyone here who's supporting it and highlighting it. The Deporting Fraudsters Act addresses a serious problem. Individuals who come to our country and steal from American taxpayers should not be allowed to remain in our country. This legislation ensures that illegal aliens who defraud the United States government or unlawfully receive taxpayer-funded benefits are inadmissible and deportable under federal law. Current immigration law leaves gaps that allow bad actors to exploit public programs without facing appropriate consequences. This bill closes those gaps and ensures individuals who steal benefits intended for needy American citizens face removal. We have already seen why action is needed. Independent journalist Nick Shirley helped expose a massive fraud scheme showing how organized and widespread these scams can become even when oversight fails. Fraud targeting programs like Social Security, SNAP, and Medicare does not affect just a government budget. It harms seniors who spend their lives paying into these programs, working families trying to get ahead, and vulnerable Americans who rely on these resources. This is not an isolated problem. Last fall, I blew the whistle on Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, exposing how one physician in his 80s billed Medicare over $600 million over the course of the Biden administration, basically from 21 through 2024, with 95% of billings concentrated in the Los Angeles County area. That level of abuse is unacceptable. And underscores how vulnerable these programs are without strong accountability. Entering this country illegally is already a crime. Turning programs meant to help our truly needy citizens into vehicles for large-scale fraud is even worse. Those who steal from hardworking Americans must be held accountable and should not be allowed to remain in the United States. The Deporting Fraudsters Act restores fairness, protects taxpayer dollars, and reinforces the rule of law. I'm here today to support this legislation and look forward to working with my colleagues to make sure we get it across the finish line. And I yield to Mr. Emmer.
Thanks, Claudia. Last week, two separate terrorists targeted Americans at a synagogue in Michigan and in a classroom in Virginia. Our prayers are with the family of Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Shaw, who was tragically killed by the monster who opened fire at Old Dominion University. The profile of the ODU terrorist is troubling. A naturalized citizen from Sierra Leone, convicted of attempting to support ISIS in 2016, released from prison early by the Biden administration in 2024, only to carry out a terrorist attack in 2026. The writing was on the wall. Yet the Biden administration's soft on terrorism policies and our nation's current immigration laws let this ISIS-affiliated individual stay in America and walk free. An American life was lost as a direct result. It's common sense that any naturalized citizen who joins or supports a designated terrorist organization should be denaturalized and deported. But under current law, it's virtually impossible to do so. That's why Senator Eric Schmitt and I introduced the SCAM Act earlier this year. This legislation will make it easier to strip terrorists of their citizenship and ship them back to where they came from. It's simple. Terrorists do not belong on U.S. soil, naturalized or not. As our nation faces varying threats, I will remind you that the Democrats have now shut down the Department of Homeland Security for over a month. Airports across the country are feeling the impact. On Friday, TSA workers received $0 paycheck because Democrats continue to block DHS funding. More than 300 TSA officers have quit since the start of this shutdown, the second Democrat shutdown in just 6 months. And can you blame them? Because of the Democrats' reckless political games, the men and women of TSA have been forced to work without pay for 43% of this fiscal year. 43%. It's almost half. Democrats are playing political games while these TSA officers struggle to put food on the table, pay the mortgage, and take care of their families. It's cruel, it's dangerous, and it's time for this to end. Democrats could stop this immediately today if they wanted to. I hope they do. And with that, I turn it over to our leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Whip. Happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you. We have a number of things that we're doing this week. We are tomorrow bringing a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. A really important debate to have to, number one, do here in Washington what every state in America does, and that is require fiscal discipline, that at the end of each fiscal year we balance our books, just like families do every year. Those conversations around a kitchen table where you talk about making priorities and ultimately fund the things that are most important, and based on how much money you have coming in, you don't spend more than you take in. Shouldn't Washington have not only that same debate, but that same requirement in the United States Constitution? It's going to be a really critical vote to watch on the House floor. Who stands for fiscal discipline and who wants to continue recklessly spending other people's money? That will happen tomorrow. You already heard about the efforts we're going to continue to take to root out fraud in America, to protect taxpayer money, especially from people who come here illegally and then abuse this very country and the wonderful things that these people do in this country to help welcome people, but yet those that take advantage of us should have no place here. You're going to see that vote as well. But you're also going to see the Democrats start trying to shift blame as the final results of what they've done to shut down the Department of Homeland Security become evident to all Americans. Anybody who flies on a plane now knows what the Democrats have done with the Department of Homeland Security shutdown. At my home airport in New Orleans, you had lines wrapped around the airport all the way into the parking garage. People waiting over 3 hours and missing flights because Democrats want to have yet another tantrum. It's not the first time that they've tried to spark chaos in the country. As the whip said, it's the second shutdown they've had in just 6 months. Because Democrats don't want to govern. Democrats are not capable of governing. They just want chaos in America. And it's hurting real Americans all across this nation. Obviously, it starts with those workers that aren't getting paid, that have to show up. And we see it at the airports with TSA agents. Over 100,000 employees of the Department of Homeland Security are working without pay because Democrats don't care about people. And this week, you're going to hear him talking about a discharge petition. Let me tell you what that is. It's yet another attempt by Democrats to defund the police. It's a defund the police discharge. That's what it is. Why? Because go back to the Summer of Love. You know, when people were burning down cities, Democrats' crazy idea was to defund the police. They tried it. The American people recognized it for what it is, one of the dumbest political ideas maybe in the history of American politics. But the Democrats aren't done with it. Now that you're in another moment of Democrat-created chaos, what is their answer? To defund law enforcement again. That's what their petition does. The American people aren't going to be fooled by it. We don't fund agencies piecemeal. You fund the things you support and you don't fund the things you don't like. We have a Department of Homeland Security. It was created in the wake of 9/11. Democrats are operating like it's September 10th, before 9/11 happened. They want to repeat those mistakes by shutting that critical department down at a heightened level of security. We've seen the terrorist attacks here on our homeland. We know what's going on, and yet Democrats have voted to shut that department down because they don't care about American people. They don't care about families. People are missing flights. People are going without pay while working. Hundreds of them have quit. TSA workers that just said, I can't do this anymore. I've got a family to feed. I've got to go get a stable job. And working for the federal government under Democrats' crazy radical chaos is just not a place where they can be. They're real victims in the Democrats' dangerous game. And now this defund the police discharge is one more example that they're not serious people. But we've got real work to do. And American people are counting on us to get the job done. And the man leading that fight to get the job done is our Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
Thank you, Leader Scalise. I would say good morning and happy St. Patrick's Day, but it's not a happy day for so many millions of Americans. It's really a difficult one. We're on day 31 since the Democrats decided to shut the government down, the partial shutdown, this time of Homeland Security. This is now the third longest shutdown in American history. They like making history on the other side, the wrong kind. They had the longest shutdown in history last fall, as we all know, and now they've got the third. Today is a direct result of Democrats taking the Department of Homeland Security hostage in order to protect criminal illegal aliens. That's exactly what it is. Here's some of the stats. Roughly 120,000 DHS employees, including 50,000 TSA agents, are going without pay for yet another week. FEMA's ability to respond to natural disasters is increasingly imperiled. We had some big weather events, as you might have noticed, in the last 24 hours. Our agency of government that is responsible for assisting with that is being hampered. American airports obviously are reaching a breaking point, so severe that airlines are pleading with Democrats to please fund the Department of Homeland Security. It's fallen on deaf ears. 4 separate times, Republicans have voted to fully fund DHS since this chaos ensued, 4 times. And on each of those times, Democrats voted almost unanimously to block the funding. Now, instead of doing what's right and putting an end to this charade, Democrats insist on tearing the bill apart piece by piece. Their latest proposal would only partially fund DHS while stripping funding for ICE and Customs and Border Patrol. As Leader Scalise just reminded you, the discharge petition is really a petition to defund the police. Think of it. The law enforcement agencies that are the part of the Department of Homeland Security are what they are targeting. Democrats refuse to reopen TSA and FEMA and the Coast Guard and these other critical functions of government unless they can reopen our borders to illegal aliens, because that's exactly what their gambit would accomplish. This is not a serious position. It is not one that the American people agree with. As one of the primary agencies responsible for protecting the homeland, the Customs and Border Patrol plays an irreplaceable role in our national security framework. This is not a game. Our CBP agents stand on the front lines. They protect our nation against transnational crime and drugs and child trafficking, terrorist threats before they reach our communities. It is our largest federal law enforcement agency. CBP is the largest federal law enforcement agency, and any bill that strips its funding weakens our defenses against terrorist plots, it undermines the integrity of our borders, and it disrupts lawful travel through U.S. ports of entry, including the millions of American and international travelers through processed at our airports every single day. Now, it bears repeating, in just the last 2 weeks, we have had 4 jihadist attacks on American soil, all of which originated from perpetrators who were already inside the country. Every one of those attacks falls squarely under the purview of the Department of Homeland Security, and the Democrats don't want to fund it. And now they're demanding we strip funding from the very agency responsible for stopping all of that. It's another dangerous game, a political game by Democrats that's as foolish as it is perilous. I'll make one additional point. Democrats opened our borders wide to tens of millions of illegal aliens for 4 years under Joe Biden, including untold numbers of violent, hardened, and repeat criminals. That is an objective fact, and no one can refute it. They could have closed the border any time. As you all know, I pleaded with President Biden after I became Speaker to do it, and he pretended as though he did not have the authority to close the border. They chose that. They chose to keep the border wide open, and they looked away. And that happened until President Trump was returned to office, and obviously we secured the border in a very short number of days because the law was always there. He always had the authority. And thankfully, we got a commander-in-chief who understands national security and safety. And now when our borders are finally secure and when criminal illegal aliens are finally being held to account for breaking our laws, now the Democrats want to reverse course. They want to go back to open borders. They want to defund the agencies that are responsible for keeping law and order. And now Leader Jeffries has claimed the latest proposal to defund CBP will just allow talks to continue. But you all know, because you're tracking it every day, that's nonsense. Bipartisan talks were already underway before funding lapsed. It was Democrats who walked away from the table. They did it precisely so that they could take the Department of Homeland Security as their next political hostage. They've made a political calculation. Their polling says they're not fighting Trump enough, and so they determined that Homeland Security was the place to throw down the gauntlet. It's so crazy, it really is. And since they shut down DHS now over a month ago, we've heard nothing but political posturing from Democrat leaders. They're not serious about this. The answer is simple. They don't want to fund Homeland Security. They don't want to do it. They're perfectly content jeopardizing the security of our homeland and hurting the American people if it means protecting criminal illegal aliens. And there is no other way to explain this. Democrats have made that conscious decision repeatedly. You know them by their actions. They're doing it again. In the fall, they shut down the government to try to give taxpayer-funded benefits to illegal aliens. And now they've shut down the government once again to reopen our borders and shield criminal aliens from our own laws. The American people are not on board with this. They're not going to have broken policies. They're not going to have us return to that. The broken policies of the Biden administration, they rejected that in the election soundly. The chaos that Democrats unleashed on the country, that was a big issue. In fact, it was the #1 issue in the election of 2024. We're not going back to that. The American people are not going to go back. The Republican conference is going to work every day to ensure that we don't. I'll leave you with this thought. We'll take a couple questions. Listen, CNN had a story this week. They were talking about the Quinnipiac's latest polling, which is consistent with other polls around the country, the favorability of Democrats in Congress. They are at their lowest number in history. In fact, they're far below the lowest polling numbers in history. And the story led with the lead, Democrats' favorability is lower than the Dead Sea. Okay, they're at negative 55 percentage points of favorability, negative net 55% in the open polling. And among independents, Democrats in Congress are at negative 60%. They should just retire. They should just throw in the white towel and give us the Congress so we can fix this mess and stop the charade. This midterm election that we're coming up on is a contrast election. This is not I was talking with Newt Gingrich the other night, and you know, he brought the contract with America. This is a contrast for America. That's what we have. This is common sense, the Republican Party and our policies versus crazy. This is crazy. It's crazy. And I'll take a few questions. Yeah, from her. Well, that's not a green tie. Never mind. Over here. Go over here. Come on. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so the president has said that the Save America Act is his #1 priority.
Yeah.
When making the argument to Democrats to vote yes for this, because it will require Democrat votes to pass, can you give for me one example of fraud conducted in a previous election that the Save America Act would prevent?
Look, we're not going to litigate all that. I can tell you what I'll tell Democrats. You should listen to the American people. Ostensibly, we're supposed to come here and represent the interests of the American people. This is a 90-10 issue in public opinion polling, and Democrats agree that you should be a citizen and have a photo ID to vote at a tune of about 70%. So there's no argument that you shouldn't do this. If they want free and fair elections, if they don't think fraud should be a problem, then they should vote to enforce federal law. It's already the law, as you know. It's already the law that you have to be a citizen to vote in American elections, and we should enforce that. And having a photo ID, you have to have a photo ID to do everything in American society. Why not to vote? It's ridiculous for them to oppose it. We are cheering along the Senate Republicans and trying to force this through. Hopefully, we can get this to the president's desk for signature. It's a top priority, not just for Republicans in Congress. Again, common sense versus crazy. It's crazy to say that you should not be a citizen or not have ID to vote. And it is common sense, and it comports to the American people. Go ahead, all the way down. Yeah. Thank you.
This morning, former Congressman Joe Kent, who you campaigned for when he ran
Well, that proposition at the end is clearly wrong. I'm on the Gang of Eight. I got all the briefings. We all understood there was clearly an imminent threat, that Iran was very close to the enrichment of nuclear capability, and they were building missiles at a pace that no one in the region could keep up with. They were far outpacing our allies and friends and us in our defense capability, because we had personnel, installations, members of the armed services, and civilians in the region. Iran was building up ballistic missiles at such a rapid pace, and we knew that their plan was to fire them upon Americans. The commander-in-chief and his administration had a very difficult decision to make. I don't know where Joe Kent is getting his information, but he wasn't in those briefings, clearly, because the Secretary of State, the Secretary of War, and everyone, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane, they had exquisite intelligence, and we understood that this was a serious moment for us. Had the president waited, I am personally convinced that we would have mass casualties of Americans, service members and others, and our installations would have been dramatically damaged. And so we had to, the president felt that he had to strike first to prevent those mass casualties. That's the summary. I can't tell you the classified part, but that's the summary that's made public, and it's accurate. Yeah, Manu.
It's been more than 2 weeks since this war was launched by the United States against Iran, yet the House has not had a single public hearing with a cabinet official about the cost to American taxpayers and to American service members. Why has the House not heard testimony from a cabinet official about this war?
I don't know if you've noticed, but they've given us multiple
Public hearing,
briefings.
a public hearing,
Well,
not
they're
classified briefing.
well, it's still, we're in the midst of a couple of weeks long operation that's very sensitive in its mission and scope, and you cannot go outside of the classified briefing to give to the public the information, because it would adversely affect our mission. They have well explained this to members of Congress in multiple briefings, both before, during, and after the operation commenced. We had the auditorium full of House members just last. The American public is getting. I've just relayed to you the summary of the non-classified information. All members are out talking about it around the clock. You're following them around with microphones, getting their clips and insights and their opinions. This is being watched very carefully, but we're in the midst of an operation that is winding down. According to the president himself, we are very close to having the mission completed. The Strait of Hormuz is an ongoing issue, and he has, I think, rightfully called upon allies and friends and other nations who depend much more than we do on the Strait of Hormuz being open for their oil supply to step up and assist and put the terrorists and tyrants at bay, because that's good for stability and calm around the world, and America stands for that, okay? We are standing for freedom. We have taken out an enemy that was seeking to do us harm and wipe Israel off the map, and that's a good thing, and it will be a great thing for the stability of prices going forward and the calm around the world. So we ask our allies to step up and acknowledge that reality and help us out. I think that's a very reasonable proposal. Jay.
On FISA,
Yeah.
are you going to move a clean extension? Is that your plan?
The plan is to move a clean extension of FISA. As you know, FISA in Section 702 is responsible for the large measure of intelligence that we use to protect and keep Americans safe. It expires in April, and we're working, looking at that deadline, and hoping that we can get a clean authorization done for at least 18 months. Now, why would we go that route? Because you remember last time it was up for reauthorization, we instituted 56 substantive reforms to FISA. By every measure and review, those are working just as we planned. We've not had the abuses that were happening before those reforms, and everybody in Congress understands the necessity of ensuring that we keep the homeland safe, except for the Democrats, who, as you know, are choosing not to fund the Department of Homeland Security. One more.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. President Trump recently has said that the war in Iran will be over when he, quote, feel it in my bones. What does he mean by that?
Well, I think his bones are informed by the intelligence, okay? So, look, it's the commander-in-chief, whomever is the president, whomever is the commander-in-chief, under our constitutional system, is given a broad amount of latitude and authority. Their decisions are informed by all the intelligence and the experts, a large panel of them from the Joint Chiefs of Staff on down, who come in and advise the president. Every president makes a gut decision, and hopefully they make a prayerful decision. I think this president will as well. He's getting great advice from great people, and I'm very encouraged about where we are. I think this will wind down quickly, and it's going to be in the best interest of America going forward and of the whole world. Thank you.